Do you have questions about the benefits of a long-term care policy? Hi, I'm Garrett Ray, financial planner here at the Wealth Guardians and the Ray Financial Group. And I have a special guest today that's going to help explain the details that you need to know about long-term care. In this episode, we're going to talk about the full details of long-term care that you need to know. And please remember, don't forget to hit these like and subscribe buttons down below. All right, let me introduce my guest. With me today, I have the distinct pleasure of having Alecia Barnette. She is the Senior Vice President of the Care Planning Department at Financial Independence Group. And we're going to get into the specifics about long-term care that you need to know. Alecia, I got my first question here for you. So explain to the audience a little bit, what is the differences between how long-term care can exist? We've got something called traditional long-term care and asset-based long-term care. Explain to the audience how those two things work.
Absolutely, and that's a great question, Garrett. So I like to use the analogy, there's two types of long-term care. There's traditional long-term care and asset-based long-term care. Traditional is like renting. Asset-based long-term care is like owning. So traditional long-term care, it's kind of like homeowners or car insurance. You're going to pay into this policy if you need it. It's pennies on the dollar leverage for long-term care services. However, if you pay into it for many, many, many years and you don't ever need it, there's no benefit. And there's obviously not an exit strategy as well. So a lot of people really have gone away from really the long-term care traditional solutions. And now we have these newer products called asset-based long-term care solutions, and they're written on life insurance and annuity chassis, and it's more like owning your contract. You have a benefit whether you live, whether you quit, or whether you die. Does that make sense, Garrett?
It makes sense to me. You know, there's always that debate, is it better to rent or to own? You make the choice. Next question I have for you, Alecia, is if someone's out there curious about what are the benefits of owning a long-term care policy, and I'll use your verbiage, owning, what is that protecting me against? What are the benefits that I'm receiving, or perhaps me and my spouse are receiving, by owning a long-term care policy?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So I have a policy, Garrett, to protect my kids. So I want them to talk to each other when I pass away, because long-term care doesn't bring families together. It tears families apart. So I would rather have them supervise the care rather than provide the care. And long-term care policies are going to step in and they're going to take that burden off of your family. And then obviously financially, long-term care is very expensive. In fact, the national average for facility care is $109,000 a year. And home care is typically about half the cost. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather use my policy to pay for care in the home.
Absolutely. You know, I've kind of heard you say the phrase before that, you know, geez, if I have a situation where I need skilled nursing help, then, and I don't have a plan, then my money becomes the plan. Explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. So what I like to say is if you haven't allocated something, you've allocated everything. Mm-hmm. So what I would recommend, if you're not really familiar with the cost, there's a website, longtermcare.gov. It's got some fantastic information about who needs care, how long you need care, what type of services are available. But then there's a link called Cost of Care. If you click on that link, it will take you back to the Genworth Cost of Care survey. You can put any location in the city, so in the country. So you could put in Clemens or Winston-Salem or Charlotte, wherever you might reside, and it's going to pull up the local cost. And again, it's very, very pricey. But what you have to remember is, again, if you don't have a plan, your money is your plan. So be thinking about this as we go through this presentation today. Which asset would you liquidate first to pay for care?
And that's a tough question indeed. Next question I have for you, Alecia, is, you know, if we're interested in learning more about this long-term care policy, how would I fund one?
Absolutely. So the old school renting would be just income. So you'd stroke a check every month, every quarter, every year, however you'd like to pay for that. But some of these newer solutions, you have a multitude. You can pay for them with any asset under the sun. For example, if you have money sitting in a CD and you're not utilizing it, you don't need it for income, So cash or cash equivalent is one way. You could take an old annuity that maybe you don't, a non-qualified annuity you're not going to turn on for income, and you can repurpose that and you can leverage it for pennies on the dollar for care. For example, you put in $100,000, it gives you $300,000 for long-term care. Another great option is qualified dollars. There are so many of us that save money in 401ks and IRAs, and we've never paid taxes on those dollars. You can actually utilize those in a tax-efficient way to put into these long-term care solutions. And then, of course, last but not least, just like the traditional policies, you can actually fund these newer asset-based long-term care plans, the ones you own using income. So from a cash flow perspective, you could pay it up anywhere from 5 years all the way to paid to age 100, just again, from a cash flow perspective to reduce those premiums.
I'm glad you touched on some of, the ability to use your qualified funds to help with this need that folks have. Speaking about that, tell us how flexible are the benefits under these long-term care policies compared to something that you might be covered under Medicare or Medicaid?
That is a fantastic question. This is one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to long-term care, is that the government will take care of you. And I always get a chuckle when I say that. But really, there's Medicare and Medicaid. And Medicare has certain stipulations that go along with it. You have to be hospitalized for 3 days. It typically covers up to 100 days of skilled care. And you have to be rehabilitating. So it's really short-term care, not long-term care. And then let's talk about Medicaid. Medicaid, you have to spend down your hard-earned assets. And if you're married, yes, you could leave your spouse impoverished. But here's the worst part about it. Medicaid typically doesn't cover care in the home. And I don't know about you, but I would like to stay in the home as long as I can. And Medicaid just doesn't do that. You have to go into—
It's not an option.
That's right. It's just not an option. So the flexibility with the long-term care solutions that are out there today, you can really receive care anywhere you want. You can receive care in the home, which would be my preference. You could receive it in an assisted living, a nursing home. You could have adult daycare services. The flexibility is there, and it's going to be fully comprehensive and cover a lot more than the Medicaid system will cover.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Alecia, for taking the time, 10 minutes just to explain a lot of the highlights of long-term care and what value it can provide to folks that are interested. Well, that's going to cover it today for our episode of The Vault, the Wealth Guardians video series on all things pertaining to retirement planning. And remember, sound financial plans do not create themselves.